Yeah.
All right, so we're starting on the upper extremity, and the first thing that we're going to talk about in the upper extremity for the appendicular skeleton is the parts of the shoulder girdle. So we have our clavicle as a part of it, which is kind of a S-shaped bone that lays flat like that, and your scapula. Now, this view here that I'm showing is the posterior side of the scapula, which means that this is the anterior. Okay, so on the anterior, this would be all muscle, right? Or flesh, or however you want to think of it. It's the meaty part. And there's a dip right there. So this is known as the subscapular fossa. Anytime there's a dip, it's typically a fossa or an indentation or anything like that. That's a fossa. So subscapular fossa. Now, we kind of identify the scapula via the borders. So there's a couple things going on. Clearly, this is where your arm would be hanging off of, right? So this region here is articulating directly with the head of the humerus, like that. And so this surface is known as the glenoid fossa or cavity. Either one is fine, glenoid cavity. And back to the posterior side, which you can feel on yourself, is the spine of the scapula. The spine of the scapula, which is just the pointy projection that you can feel. If you were to follow the spine of the scapula all the way to the tip, and you can kind of do that on your own too, this is known as the acromion. Spine, tip, acromion.
Process?
Acromion process
Oh, okay.
is fine. Now, glenoid cavity, right? I am going to be continuous with the glenoid cavity, and that is known as the coracoid process. How I remember it is C for cavity, and it kind of looks like it makes a little C, and it's continuous with that. So the spine is continuous with the acromion. Coracoid process is continuous with the cavity. Cool? You'll see some clear dips above and a little below the spine. So this is the supraspinatus fossa, infraspinatus fossa. Here is the medial border, because what's off here? Your humerus, and which direction is that? Lateral. So the opposite side would have to be medial. Everybody understand that? And this is the inferior angle. Okay, ready for that again?
Inferior angle.
Yeah. No, like the whole thing?
Yes, please.
So scapula, inferior angle, medial border, which is this whole region actually. Medial border, glenoid cavity, coracoid process, acromion, spine, supraspinatus fossa, infraspinatus fossa. I've seen some texts use spinous fossa. Either one is fine. I don't recall which one I put on your list. Spinous. And then subscapular fossa. Not so bad. Okay? For clavicle, if it was going to sit on a skeleton, you would have one end that articulates with the acromion, like that, and you'd have one end that you can kind of feel on your own, connecting to this manubrium of the sternum. And in the middle, we said that was the jugular notch, but on either side is the clavicular notch. So this is the sternal ends. How do you know that? The flat side on a clavicle, the flat portion, is the acromial end. And more of a straighter edge is the sternal end. So sternal, acromial, this is our clavicle. Moving right along for the long bones. You know, those of you in lecture, we kind of looked at, you know, the epiphysis, diaphysis, and all that stuff. But that's not what we want here. We want to actually name the structures of this. So I'll tell you right now, a big misconception, or we could call this an FMQ, is not realizing how much smaller the humerus is compared to the femur. So when you get to a station, it's like, oh gosh, is this a femur or a humerus? How do you know? Yeah, look at yourself, the size difference. And also another main feature is that the head of the humerus, the side that's going to sit in the glenoid fossa, is not as prominent. And when we get to the lower extremity, I'll show you that too. So the head of the humerus, and here's where I took off a lot of stuff.
Okay.
So there are two necks on both the humerus and the femur. And if I were to just take my pipe cleaner or a pencil and just trace the head or the projection of that femur head, that would be known as the anatomical neck. If I were to go down here and cut it all off, this is the surgical neck. Okay? For purposes of lab practical, neck is fine. And if you just write neck,
Neck of the humerus.
neck of the humerus. Excellent. So, the head of the humerus points where? But where is it pointing towards? Directional term.
Proximal to the...
Starts with an M. Starts
Medial.
with an M. Thank you.
Medium.
Wow, we were going way off. Like superior. Come on, Bobby. So this sits here, and it's pointing medial, right? So that's what I mean. No, this is perfect because this is not test day, so you could throw out anything you want, and you know and understand why that's not the right term. So we've learned all these terms, but now we're actually applying and using them, right? So the head always is going to be medial because this is our arm, and it's got to sit into our glenoid cavity, which is hanging out. So our arm is lateral, but the glenoid cavity and the head of the humerus are medial. Does that make sense? So if the whole point of that was on the lateral side of the proximal humerus are two major bumps, and you can kind of feel them on your own. That's like your shoulder bumps that you feel towards the lateral side. The bigger one is known as the greater tubercle, and the smaller one is the lesser tubercle. So greater tubercle, lesser tubercle. There is a gap in between. I could even put like this skewer in. That is the intertubercular sulcus. The intertubercular sulcus. Let's see. So as we're going down to the shaft of the humerus, there's an area here, and on our models, it's definitely on purpose where we start to see some bumpy ridges throughout. See, like that's for your deltoid muscle to attach to. So this is known as the deltoid tuberosity. Okay? Why it was so important to understand that the head is medial is because we have all kinds of projections down here that make up our actual elbow joint, right? And articulate with both the radius and the ulna. So if I'm on the medial side, this thing here would be the medial epicondyle. And so that would make this one the lateral epicondyle. Does that make sense? So you're going to follow where the head is to know. I know this is so boring.
No, it's so hot.
And this is the lateral epicondyle. In the posterior side, that hole right there, that your ulna sits in, that makes your actual elbow, is the olecranon fossa. The olecranon fossa. So that's on the posterior side. However, I'm going to just switch it to the anterior, and you do see a little dip there. A little one. Not so prominent as the olecranon fossa, but a little one. And that little one is called the trochlear. I usually put trochlear notch, but I don't see that on there. So this is the trochlea, and that's fine, but it's really the trochlear fossa or notch. Then it's okay. I don't have this memorized. There's one right here. So where the view that you're looking at, the smaller fossa, there's a ball right here, or a cap. That's your capitulum. Capitulum. Trochlea, capitulum. And then the surface here is your trochlear notch, but I didn't even go into detail with that. Go ahead and cross off radial fossa. That's enough for the humerus. So y'all good with the humerus? You want to do it again?
Do it one more time.
Do it one more time. So, head, neck of the humerus, or neck is down here as well. We have greater tuberosity, lesser tuberosity, intertubercular sulcus. Then we have deltoid tuberosity. And we have trochlea, which is this whole region, capitulum, medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle. And that's it. So now we're just heading down, and if we were to look at the humerus like that and look at where the ulna sits, it's right there. Okay? And how does the radius come about? I'll tell you now, those of you who don't have time to look at these individually as much as you should, always get these mixed up. U for ulna. Okay? U for ulna. I mean, you could go like that and say, what did she say about a C? It's not going to work. So U for ulna. So the one that makes a U. The radius has a radial head that is flat, like that. So it's flat. So in anatomical position, your radius is towards the thumb side. Your ulna is towards the pinky side. However, when you flip over, they cross, and we'll talk about cool stuff like that in lecture of what they do when we're moving. But in anatomical position, this is on your lateral side, thumb side. So how I remember is rad. Rad. So you remember rad. Right, because that's where your radius is. So what else do we need to know about radius? How about just the head, radial tuberosity, neck, and then what you feel down on the distal side right here is the most lateral bump that you can see. It's pretty prominent on all of our wrists, and that is the styloid process of the radius. Don't you have another one on the other side? Mm-hmm. Guess what you think that's called? Guess what that's called? What do you think? Excellent. So it is going to be very important to write of the radius of the ulna for things that obviously are the same term for different bones. So this is the styloid process of the radius. So radius, once again, we have our head, radial tuberosity. This entire region is the neck, and styloid, styloid process. Okay? So for the ulna, not much to it. I just want you to know trochlear notch, because it's going to sit on the trochlea right here. So this is the trochlear notch. This is the olecranon process. The olecranon process. Why is that so important? Because you can feel it. like that's it right there. Okay, that's the olecranon process. And we did say down here was the styloid process of the ulna. Nothing else on the ulna. So cross off coronoid, radial notch, and that's it. So that's for the ulna. And here comes the carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges.
Can I ask you something?
Absolutely.
The ulnar notch.
Yeah. So the ulnar notch is really the actual U, the inside surface of the U.
Okay. So that was the
Humerus?
Are you crossing off head on the ulna? Ulnar notch is on the radius part, it says. Under the ulna part.
Oh, this is the trochlear notch. Did I not hear you right?
Yeah, ulnar notch.
Ulnar notch we're
Ulnar.
crossing off.
Oh, okay.
We're crossing off ulnar notch?
Yes, because that's just where these two guys come together.
Okay.
So it'll be radius, and these probably don't even belong to the same arm. So we're going to pretend. So it would come like this and this. So where these attach, well, technically these are the same side. So it'll be like this. So where they attach is here. So it's kind of
Hard to tell.
yeah, tiny. Good question though. So trochlear notch is the only one on the ulna that I want you to know. All right. So with the hand, if you take a look at it, you will have to tell me if it's a right or left hand. And that may sound easy now, but come lab practical day, you know, I might have it anterior, posterior, and I can tell you a lot of times that's frequently missed. So make sure you are looking at the thumb side and if it is anterior versus posterior. So get a good look at what it looks like from both views. So these are the carpals here. And we'll talk about those in just a second because those are the wrist bones, small bones, part of your wrist. These are metacarpals, the very next long bone that you see in here. And then we have phalanges. Phalanges are made up of 3 individual bones except for the first digit. So how we count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so your pinky is 5th digit, your thumb is the first digit, and that's how you get 2, 3, 4 in the middle. Okay, why is that so important? Because that's how we're universally identifying what structure we are looking at. The first digit only has a proximal and distal phalange, and 2, 3, 5 have proximal, middle, and distal phalange. So let me give you a little pop quiz to see if you can name that one that I'm holding right there. And what would you write down?
3. It's right now 3.
Third.
Third, and then middle.
Middle phalange. Excellent. So 2 and 4 is pretty much what I pick, so you know that. So I know you know how to count the direction from the thumb, and also it'll depend on right or left also. So your complete answer would be the third middle phalange. That was this one, right? Mm-hmm. Third middle phalange of the right hand. That would be just, and you don't even have to write all of that out. If you have an R with a circle around it and third, that's enough for me because I know what you are telling me. And as long as you write phalange and spell it right, Phalange.
How do you count? Is it 1, 2, 3?
No.
1, 2, 3. You just said that as.
That's okay. Metacarpals wise, you still count it the same way, but there's no differentiation. So this is our first metacarpal, second, third, fourth, fifth. So being able to recognize if the label is on the metacarpal versus the proximal, middle, or distal phalange will probably be the only thing that you need to keep track of. So here comes the carpal bones. So go ahead and do